Breaking news tonight. And this one is sending shockwaves through the world of politics, media, and public opinion. Imagine this: a nationally recognized journalist, a household name, a voice that millions have tuned into for years, suddenly pointing her finger at none other than a former president of the United States. That's right, Megyn Kelly, one of the most recognizable figures in American media, appears to have suggested that President Barack Obama carries responsibility for the shocking incident involving conservative activist Charlie Kirk. The headline practically writes itself. Megyn Kelly Obama for Charlie Kirk shooting. But is this sensational claim the full truth, or is it yet another example of the never-ending storm of outrage, blame, and finger-pointing that defines American politics today? Tonight, we're going to peel back the layers, examine the facts, break down the reactions, and uncover why this story has gripped millions within hours of hitting the airwaves. Now, let's be clear. Whenever there's a tragedy, especially one involving violence and public figures, emotions run hot. The media reacts instantly. Social networks explode with takes, memes, and hashtags. Supporters rally, critics pile on, and suddenly the actual details of the event itself get buried under a mountain of partisan commentary. And in the middle of that whirlwind, we now have Megyn Kelly, the former Fox News anchor turned independent media powerhouse, placing a stunning level of blame at the feet of Barack Obama. So let's rewind for a moment. Charlie Kirk, the outspoken founder of Turning Point USA, has built a reputation as one of the most fiery defenders of conservative values. He's loved by the right, loathed by the left, and undeniably one of the loudest voices, shaping young conservative thought. When news broke that Charlie Kirk had been involved in a shooting incident, it was harmony enough to dominate the headlines. Questions flooded in: what happened? Who was involved? Was he targeted because of his politics? Or was this just another tragic case of gun violence? In America's ongoing struggle with public safety, the details are still developing, and while official reports are coming in slowly, speculation filled the void almost instantly. And then came Megyn Kelly. In a broadcast that is now being clipped, shared, and dissected all over the internet, Kelly suggested that the cultural climate fostered under the Obama administration laid the foundation for this kind of violence. Yes, you heard that correctly. She didn't just blame political polarization or heated rhetoric in a general sense. She pointed directly at Barack Obama, the 44th president, as the one who created the division, the hostility, the animosity that ultimately may have led to an event like the one involving Charlie Kirk. Now, pause for a second. That's an extraordinary claim. Think about it: Obama, who left office nearly a decade ago, being tied to a violent act in 2025. That's not just commentary, that's a lightning bolt. It's the kind of statement designed to ignite firestorms, and ignite it did. Social media went ablaze within minutes. Hashtags like Megyn Kelly Obama and Charlie Kirk were trending. On one side, conservatives applauded Kelly for finally saying what no one else dared to say. On the other, liberals denounced her as reckless, irresponsible, and desperate for attention. And this is where the story shifts from just one shocking statement to something much bigger. Because whether you agree with Megyn Kelly or not, whether you think her comments were spot on or wildly out of line, you cannot deny that she has once again demonstrated the power of media personalities to dominate the political conversation. This is about more than Obama, more than Kirk, and more than Kelly. This is about how blame gets assigned in America's political wars, how narratives are shaped in real time, and how every tragedy becomes a battlefield for ideological combat. Consider the nation is already deeply divided. Every issue, guns, immigration, healthcare, elections, is filtered through red and blue lenses. So when something violent happens to a figure like Charlie Kirk, a man defined almost entirely by his political identity, it was inevitable that the commentary would not just be about safety or justice, but about politics itself. And into that environment steps Megyn Kelly, pointing her finger not at the shooter, not at the culture of violence in America, not even at the current administration, but at a president who left office back in 2017. Why Obama? That's the million-dollar question. Why leapfrog over years of other leaders, policies, and cultural battles to land squarely on the 44th president? Some argue it's because Obama represents the origin story of America's modern political divide. They say it was under his watch that race relations reached a boiling point, that the rise of social media amplified tribalism, and that the populist backlash, culminating in the election of Donald Trump, was born. In that sense, Kelly's comments are less about one man and more about what he symbolizes, the turning point of American unity into American division. But others see this as little more than a cynical move. They argue that Kelly knows exactly what she's doing. She's a veteran of the media battlefield. She understands outrage sells. She knows her words will go viral, that clips will rack up millions of views, that conservative outlets will hail her courage while progressive outlets will condemn her recklessness. In short, this could be less about history and more about headlines. As the dust begins to settle around Megyn Kelly's stunning remarks, the conversation has shifted from shock to analysis. People are asking, was this just an emotional outburst, or was there a deeper point buried within her fairy words? Because when you strip away the outrage, Kelly is essentially making a claim that Barack Obama is the architect of modern America's bitter divide. To understand why she would say that, we have to rewind to the Obama years. When Barack Obama first entered the White House in 2009, he was hailed by many as a symbol of unity, a bridge builder, even a healer. Hope and change were the words plastered across campaign posters, and millions of Americans believed they were witnessing a new chapter in national history. But as his presidency unfolded, something else began to happen. Opposition hardened. Political tribalism deepened. Racial tensions, far from healing, often intensified in the public discourse. And with the rise of social media, the divide between left and right was amplified and broadcast 24/7. Critics argue that Obama presided over a country that became more polarized than ever. They point to flashpoints like the shooting of Trayvon Martin, the unrest in Ferguson, and the rise of Black Lives Matter as moments where Obama's words and actions, whether too cautious or too bold, depending on who you ask, added fuel to a fire already burning. They argue that under his leadership, the nation's wounds were not healed but rather exposed, and those scars have shaped American politics ever since. It's within this context that Megyn Kelly's remarks strike a nerve. She's not just blaming Obama for one shooting involving Charlie Kirk. She's making the case that Obama is the father of the political environment we now live in. A world where activists like Kirk become lightning rods, where partisanship runs so deep that even acts of violence are instantly politicized. But here's where things get tricky, because while some conservatives are nodding in agreement, others are uneasy. They recognize that blaming Obama, nearly a decade after he left office, might stretch credibility. Even some on the right are saying, wait a second, shouldn't we be focused on the shooter, or on the state of public safety, rather than dragging Obama back into the fight? For them, Kelly's comments risk turning a serious situation into a political blame game that distracts from the real issues. Meanwhile, liberals and progressives have wasted no time firing back. For them, Kelly's remarks are proof of what they've been saying all along, that conservative media thrives on scapegoating Obama. To them, it's déjà vu, Obama being blamed for everything from immigration to healthcare costs to, now, a shooting involving a conservative activist in 2025. Progressive commentators argue that Kelly's statement isn't just unfair, it's dangerous. By linking a violent act to a former president without evidence, they say she risks inflaming divisions even further. And then there's the media machine itself. Clips of Kelly's broadcast are spreading like wildfire across Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube. Headlines scream about her blaming Obama. Reaction videos flood in, some supporting her, others mocking her, still others dissecting her logic line by line. Pundits on cable news seize the opportunity to run with the story. Because nothing draws attention quite like controversy involving two big names, Megyn Kelly and Barack Obama. Think about that dynamic for a moment. In an era when news travels at the speed of a tweet, narratives are no longer controlled by official statements or government reports. They're shaped by personalities, by commentators, by viral clips. And Megyn Kelly, whether you agree with her or not, is a master at this game. She knows how to frame a story, how to deliver it with conviction, and how to make sure her words echo far beyond her own platform. But here's the bigger picture. Every time a tragedy happens, Americans are pulled into this cycle of blame. When a shooting occurs, the left blames the right for reckless rhetoric, gun culture, or extremism. The right blames the left for creating a culture of lawlessness, of censorship, of hostility to conservative values. And caught in the middle are ordinary people who just want answers, who just want to know what happened, who just want solutions instead of finger-pointing. Charlie Kirk himself is no stranger to this battlefield. His entire public career has been defined by confrontation. Whether it's debating college students, clashing with leftist activists, or calling out what he sees as hypocrisy in liberal culture. So when violence touches his life, it's almost inevitable that the reactions wouldn't be confined to sympathy or concern. Instead, it becomes a proxy war for America's larger cultural fight. And that's where Megyn Kelly's comments land, with such impact. By tying the shooting to Obama, she's not just making a claim about history, she's escalating the battle. She's drawing a line in the sand, saying the roots of today's violence don't just lie in recent years. They trace back to a president many still revere as a unifier. And for millions of Americans who still hold fond memories of the Obama years, that's not just controversial, it's infuriating. The question now is, does this help? Does this kind of commentary bring clarity? Or does it deepen the divisions we already face? Supporters of Kelly argue that she's speaking an uncomfortable truth, that we cannot understand today's crisis without tracing their origins back to Obama-era divisions. Her critics, however, argue that this is just another example of sensationalism over substance, where the goal is not truth but attention. And here's the irony. In accusing Obama of being the root cause of America's political hostility, Kelly herself becomes part of that very hostility. The debate over her comments becomes yet another dividing line in the culture war, proving once again how hard it is to have a conversation in America without it turning into a battlefield.